hold him guiltless, not hold him guiltless, not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. You know, Israel was so reverent much of their time about God, they didn't even use his name, because they were reverent about who he was and how removed from them they were. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Oh boy. If I had another hour. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor cattle, or stranger within the gates. For in 6 days God made the heaven and earth and sea, and all that is in, and rested. Honor. Honor who? Honor thy mother and father. Some of you are older than me, but I'm going to tell you something. In God's book, you never are too old to honor your father and mother. You should be thankful for them. You should be carefully taking care of them. It breaks my heart when I hear stories of families that take the mother and dad that worked all their life to take care of them and send them off to a rest home and pay the bill and say, we'll see you in a couple of months. And never go visit or take care of. Why? Oh, we're too busy. We're making money. We're building a hole for ourselves. When you're growing up, I've been telling my grandson lately, my grandson went to work. He goes to school at 6 in the morning, he gets home at 2:30, changes clothes, goes to work and works till 6:30, gets home about 7 o'clock. He's doing this Monday through Friday, and he works from 9 to 3 on Saturday. I said to him, Saturday morning, I'm taking him into work. He's sitting there in a seat like this, you know. I said, oh, son, welcome to the adult world. All this time, you spent all that grumping and griping and fussing and moaning and groaning and questioning the wisdom of your parents and everything. And now you're here. And you get to find out how exciting it is. You got to work for a living. You got to do this, you got to do that. You had your freedom when you were home. Actually, you know, honor thy father and mother. We need to remember, folks. I hope you remember, and I know that many of you do. There's only one thing that's more important in this world than your family, and that's your relationship with God. But the next thing is your family. Your family. Now, your family isn't perfect. Anybody perfect, please leave. Your brothers, your sisters, your mothers, your dads, your grandpas, your grandmas, they're not perfect. But they're your family. And family comes first. When there's a need, of all places we ought to be able to turn to, it's our family to help us out. Oh, you're going to spoil them. Yeah, but I love it, you know, because that's family. Honor. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Oh, that's, I'm sorry, that shouldn't be in there, because that's the old-fashioned morality of years ago. So that doesn't really matter anymore. Right? You go around and you just find a girl or a guy that you can move in together with, and that way it saves you the price of a marriage license. And you're just going to test the waters and try things out and see how it works, and then you'll decide someday to get married. I found someone else. I've been married for 20 years, and I found someone else who excited me, and we had a fling. The world says, oh, good for you. Good for you. We're glad you had a good time. You know, we're glad you enjoyed yourself. You know what the Scripture says? Thou shalt not commit adultery. One man, one woman, committed to God. We don't learn, do we? Thou shalt not steal. Oh, that's only if you don't get caught. You know, it should have that little addition there. It's okay to take things from everybody else as long as you don't get caught. You know what stealing has an attitude of? Stealing has an attitude of, I'm so much better than you, I deserve to get whatever I want, and I'm going to take it. And if I can get it for free, that's just that much better. Thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his Ferrari, nor his Porsche, nor his motorhome. Well, it should be there. I'm sorry, it doesn't say that, but it should be, right? Well, see, those define the heart of God, don't they? They express to you and I how that as believers, if we walk with God and we obey those, it's the best possible thing in the world for us. Does God set up above and say, oh, you poor little buggers down here, you know, I'm going to deny you some things so that your life is a little more miserable. You know? Is that the way God looks on mankind? Doesn't He look on mankind with a sense of love, that I care for what happens to you? And when my word is applied to your life, you will find a state of happiness and contentment and joy that is far greater than anything else you could ever have in your life. That's the hardest thing in the world sometimes, to convince teenagers. Because you know why? Because they're just getting old enough to look at all of the apples. I'm sorry, it might not have been an apple. Someone was telling me the other day it was a pomegranate. The first fruit. Yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't connect with it. You know, you look out there and everything is so shiny and so bright, and I just want to try it all. And sometimes we buy into the lie, because you know what happens when we've done that? I leave a trail of ashes behind me and of destruction. And of the things that could have made me happy, could have made me content, could have drawn me closer to the Lord, I destroyed because of my sin. See, God knows what's best. So He says, you know, walk in His ways. Next He says, love Him. Folks, God doesn't want robots. God never intended for you to be a robot in this world and for Him to be like, what was that? Can't read, can you? No. Pinocchio. What was Pinocchio? Remember? Gillespie? Gillespie. The old guy. he made Pinocchio. Geppetto. All right, Geppetto. What was Pinocchio in the beginning? Here's a puppet. What's a puppet? The guy sends up there with all these strings and he makes him move and makes his arms move and everything else. And what happened to Pinocchio later on? He became a little boy and the strings were gone. You know, God does not want you to just have Him control the strings. He wants you to love Him. He really wants you to love Him. Genuinely wants you to love Him. So many times we have to be careful because that's what we leave out. We leave out the compassion, the love, the genuineness that says, Lord Jesus, I love you. I care for you because you're so important to me. I have this passion, this feeling of love for Him. Tells us to do that. And then two things, and we're out of time. Serve Him. Folks, God never intended for you to get saved and come to church and sit on your butt in the pew and do nothing else. God never intended that. He intended for you to be a servant, which what do servants do? Servants do things for the master. To willingly, joyfully be ready to perform deeds for Him. And then He says, keep the commandments, know what they are, follow God's law, serve Him. What did Israel do? Israel eventually got their act together enough to go into the promised land. And you know what? There was a group of people called Amalekites. Am I thinking of those? Anyway, they were a group of people. They had a king named Bashan of Og, I think his name was. These guys averaged 7, 8, 9 feet tall, and the width to go with it. They were unbeaten. And they controlled much of the promised land. When Israel went in, Israel first looked at them and scared them half to death. And you know what they said about them? They said, we are as grasshoppers. Seen a grasshopper lately? He's way down there. Little bitty guy compared to the giant. That's how they viewed themselves. They went in, and because God was with them, they smashed these people, killed them. When Israel went to Jericho, if you looked at the battle, a city with walls wide enough you could drive 2 or 3 chariots around on that wall. Soldiers trained, hardened to serve and fight. Plenty of food, plenty of water. Israel comes up to Jericho, the most unusual battle plan you ever heard in your life. They marched around the city and went home. Went back and ate lunch. Come up the next morning, marched around the city, went home, sat down and ate lunch. Great way to fight a war, right? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't you love that, gentlemen? They did that for 6 days. Get up, march around the city. Priest would lead with the thing, and then they'd go home and eat lunch. But on the 7th day, God said, walk around the city 7 times, and then I want the priest to blow the horn. You know what happened? They all ran away because they were so scared, and they ran back to their camp and had lunch, right? You guys are easy. No, remember the story? If you haven't read it, you should read it. It's great. They march around, they blow the horn. You know what happened? The walls of Jericho fell down before them. And Israel went in and captured the whole city. Now, why did those walls fall down? Was it just happenstance that an earthquake came along? Just happened that maybe there was something, a crack in there, and somebody hit one of the rocks and it just went around? No. God was there. And in His power, He struck those walls and they just collapsed, and then He just leads them in to victory. Isn't that the same God that you want in your life? It is in mine. I want the God of Abraham and Jacob. I want the God who brought down the walls of Jericho. I want the God who opened the Red Sea and all the things that he did. That's the God that I want to worship and walk with and serve. For he is the mighty God of all. Father, thank you. I don't know where you might be tonight. I get a little carried away sometimes. But I love the Lord, and I love to see him work in people's lives. And if you're here tonight, maybe you need a closer touch with God. Maybe you're just walking like a robot. Maybe you're serving without a heart of love. Maybe you're whatever. I'm just going to give you a second for you to deal with God. You know, that's why we have invitations. You deal with God if he's speaking to your heart.